Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I've got an incredible story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. It's a tale of hard work, sacrifice, and the dark secrets that can tear a family apart. We're diving into the life of Hank Phillips, a roughneck who spent his whole life providing for his loved ones, only to find out that everything he thought he knew was a lie. Betrayal, crime, and a fight for redemption. This story has it all. Stick around as we unravel the twists and turns that lead Hank from the oil rigs to uncovering a web of deception closer to home than he ever imagined. I can still picture that first day on the rig clear as day. The sheer size of those machines, the ocean stretching out like it went on forever, and the bond between us roughnecks, it got in your blood. The rig became my second home, and that thrill of striking oil, well, it was a feeling like no other. Every drill we sunk, every pipe we laid, it was another step toward securing a future for my family, even if it meant being away from for long stretches. Over the years, though, the job started wearing on me. The long hours, the ever-present danger, the pressure to perform, it all weighed heavy. But I kept reminding myself with every paycheck that I was building a good life for Shauna and the kids. Little did I know, those sacrifices would lead to the toughest decision of my life. Been over a year since I'd slept in my own bed, and I was itching to get home. But then a whale of a hurricane started brewing in the Gulf, forcing us to shut down the rigs. Crucial call to make, but that storm was nothing to mess with. We had 5 wells out there, 20 nautical miles apart, each one needing a careful shutdown. Thankfully, everything went smooth, crew evacuated safe and sound. Once the rigs were secured, a chopper took us back to shore. Wasn't due for leave, so my return home was gonna be a surprise. Couldn't wait to see Shauna, the kids, even old Ricky and Jenna next door. That job might have been demanding, but it paid well. Tripled my salary in 3 years, thanks to my knack for angle drilling. Made me a valuable asset, especially with the oil boom going on. 5 years back, after a promotion, I decided to get serious about early retirement. Split my paycheck 3 ways. Maxing out my 401k, investing 25% with a broker, and the rest went straight into our bank account. Shauna and I agreed to focus on paying off the mortgage and saving. Over 20 years, we built ourselves a good little nest egg, thanks to some smart investments. My broker, he diversified my portfolio across company stocks, tech giants like Google, Amazon, Facebook, the whole shebang. Even had some dividend-paying blue chips, with reports sent straight to me since I was always out on the rig. Shauna and I, we always filed taxes separately, her claiming the kids as dependents. Seemed like the smart thing to do. Now, if this hurricane hit us head on, ain't no one going back out to those rigs until they passed a full inspection. Safety of my team was paramount, insisted on it. A crew would have to check the seabed before we even thought about resuming operations. With the hurricane moving slow as molasses in January, it looked like I was looking at least 2 months off. But the longer it lingered, the higher those reconstruction costs climbed, so I kept a close eye on the weather reports. I helped write those new safety procedures myself, especially after what happened with BP. They ignored our advice, paid billions after that mess. Few million in prevention now saves billions in lawsuits and government headaches later on. BP, they learned the hard way how the feds can make a bad situation worse. The whole industry took note, started budgeting for shutdowns and putting safety above all else. BP, they learned the hard way how the feds can turn a bad situation into a full-blown circus. The whole industry took note, started budgeting for shutdowns and putting safety above all else. Shauna and I met Ricky and Jenna right after we bought our place in Cape River. Shauna was pregnant with our first, Rhett, at the time. 2 more kids followed, Alan and Summer, and they're near grown now. Ricky and Jenna, they couldn't have kids of their own, so they became like family, treating our youngins like their own flesh and blood. Ricky, now he was a character. Bit of a talker, always spinning yarns, and truth be told, he wasn't exactly the classiest fella. But he could sell ice to an Eskimo, that one. Jenna, though, she was something else. One of the most beautiful women I'd ever laid eyes on, I tell ya. If any woman would have tempted me to stray, it would have been her. Anyway, I was stuck in Tampa Airport, waiting for a flight to St. Louis when I got a text from Summer, my little girl. Asked me to call back ASAP. Hadn't seen her in 14 months, and that distance, it was starting to make me rethink this whole oil rig life. "Hey, Dad," she said, her voice tight. "Thanks for calling back so quickly." "What's up, Buttercup?" I asked, using that old nickname. "Okay, here goes nothing. Rhett's in the hospital. Got shot. Uncle Ricky's in jail for attempted murder. And Aunt Jenna, she's pregnant." "You serious?" I was floored. "Told ya, just the facts," she said, but I could hear the tremor in her voice. "But there's more. Stuff you need to know before you talk to Mama." "Why's that?" "It's complicated. More to the story than meets the eye. You always taught us to get both sides before jumping to conclusions, right?" Summer paused. "Mama, well, she might tell it different. Leave out some details, especially since she's kinda involved in all this. With Rhett, Ricky, and Jenna." "All right, Buttercup," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm about to catch a plane to St. Louis, but I'll get the first flight back to Cape River in the morning. Skip school tomorrow, and I'll grab a taxi home soon as I land. Your mama, she'll be at work by then." "You're coming home? That's great. 'Cept Mama's in New York," Summer said. "Walmart's having some bigwig meeting for all their store managers, talking about boosting sales and whatnot. Seems our region's one of the few still making good money, so they want Mama to share her secrets." "They tell her anything?" I asked, dread starting to creep in. "Nah, not yet. I'm still here at the hospital, waiting to hear from the doctor," Summer explained. "Figured I should call you first, let you know what's going on. Didn't want to involve Mama till we talked." "You did good, Buttercup. Real good. Tell him to bill it to Hank Phillips. I'll bring our medical cards with me in the morning." "Thanks, Daddy. Love you. See you tomorrow." We said our goodbyes, and I hung up, feeling a whole lot of things I couldn't even name. Headed through security and found my gate, trying to wrap my head around it all. Gave me too much time to think, too. About my family, about how we got here. Most of our married life, I'd been out on those rigs. Started at the bottom, worked my way up. When I was at sea, that's when I got serious about my education. Got me where I am today. I remembered the day I met Shauna like it was yesterday. She was tearing through the Walmart parking lot, hit a patch of black ice, and bumped right into my old truck. Wasn't much damage, so we went inside, and she bought me a coffee and a sub, being the polite southern girl she was. When she took off her coat, I got my first good look at her. Beautiful woman, even back then. We hit it off right away. Shauna, she made me want to be better. Before her, I was just drifting, day to day. She gave me a reason. Within a month, I was back in school, trying to make something of myself. The closer we got, the more determined I was to build a good life for us. 8 months later, we were engaged. 6 months after that, we were hitched. I got on with that offshore work, and with Shauna by my side, I excelled. Paychecks got bigger, promotions came faster. Shauna, she was working hard too. Got herself a business degree, started out as a department manager at the Piggly Wiggly. She had a knack for that retail stuff, knew how to move products like nobody's business. Before we knew it, she was running the whole dang store in Cape River, turning it into one of the fastest growing in the whole region. Now, about Ricky and Jenna. Ricky, who called himself an independent wholesaler, said he drove a route, selling tools to mechanics. Truth be told, I never saw him actually selling much of anything. But he always had cash on hand, dressed Jenna in fancy clothes, bought her more sparkly trinkets than a crow collects. Didn't add up, especially since our neck of the woods weren't exactly on the way to any major highways. Ricky, he knew everyone, always had a line on something nobody else could find. Said it was all part of his business connections. But the man was a walk-in, talkin' mystery. Easygoing, carefree, always flashing that smile. But always paying in cash. Avoided credit cards like they were the devil himself. Only bank account they had was in Jenna's name. Jenna, now she was different. Respected woman, worked for the Southeast Missourian, writing articles and helping run the place. Sat on all sorts of boards, volunteered her time. A real pillar of the community, that one. Folks probably wondered how we became friends. Ricky and Jenna, they were black as midnight, while Shauna and I, well, our families had been in these parts since before the Civil War. But when our kids were little, Ricky and Jenna, they were always there. Taking them to the park, buying them ice cream, spoiling them rotten. Ricky would joke that they'd adopted our kids, and folks believed him. Our kids even started calling him Uncle Ricky. We felt lucky to have him in our lives. But sitting on that plane, heading home, Summer's words kept playing over and over in my head. This whole mess, it just didn't add up. She swore it all tied back to Ricky and Jenna, but how? Had myself a 3-hour layover in St. Louis, the airport, there's nothing but a headache. No place to smoke inside, had to go out and then back through security again. Folks vaping up a storm inside, but me, I needed my fix of real tobacco. Stepped outside, lit up a Marlboro, and let that nicotine ease my nerves. One of the perks of rig life, cheap smokes. Always brought back a few cartons, even though I put my foot down about booze on the job. The men hated it at first, but their wives appreciated the savings, even if it made me about as popular as a fly in the sweet tea. Think about being American, it's all those hidden taxes. Funding, the government spending sprees. Politicians, they overspend and slap on new taxes faster than you can say, Jack Robinson, and folks forget all about him soon enough. Understanding tax law was like trying to understand women, something I'd always struggled with. Not many folks knew that back in 1822, the government put a 1% tax on imports, said it was to support the native tribes. Never got repealed, that tax. Always wondered if those tribes ever saw a dime of it. I took another drag, shaking my head. Government waste, it was a plague on this country. That's when I heard someone calling my name. Hey, Harold, well, I'll be. Ain't seen you since graduation. It was Glenn, an old face from high school. Couldn't believe he recognized me. Glenn, how have you been, man? I grinned, tapping my cigarette. You age like fine wine, don't you know it? Ah, stop it, you old dog. You ain't looking so bad yourself. Where are you headed? Back to Cape River. Got a wife and kids waiting on me there. Got sent home early, thanks to that hurricane churning up the Gulf. Still stuck on those oil rigs? When you gonna quit living like a roughneck and get yourself a real job? He chuckled, nudging me with his elbow. Working on retirement, Glenn. Might be sooner than you think. Gonna find something that keeps me closer to home. Give Shauna a real surprise. Shauna? You didn't marry Shauna Richards, did ya? He looked genuinely shocked. Sure did. Met her down in Texas, back when I was working the rigs there. She was in business school then. Sweet as a peach, that one. Well, I'll be. My little sister, Amber, was really close with Shauna back in high school. Funny thing is. He lowered his voice conspiratorially. Back then, those two, they only had eyes for black fellas. Amber even married one. Didn't end so well, though. Left her high and dry after their second kid. Rough time for her, but she landed on her feet, became a lawyer. Doing all right for herself now. We talked for a spell, catching up on old times, swapping stories about who was doing what and where they'd landed. Turns out, Glenn was married with 3 kids of his own. Time flew by, and before I knew it, I was boarding that last flight to Cape River. Couldn't shake this unease, though. Summer's words kept echoing in my ears. The taxi dropped me off at the house, and I hauled my bags up the porch steps, feeling a weariness that went deeper than bone-tired. Summer met me at the door, pulled me into a hug that was tighter than a python's grip. I could feel the exhaustion radiating off of her, the worry etched into her face. We exchanged quick hellos, then she led me inside, her face pale and drawn. Daddy, she began, her voice barely a whisper. Something's been going on. For the past couple of years, I started noticing things, changes in Mama's routine. At first, I figured it was just 'cause of that promotion at the Piggly Wiggly, you know, longer hours, more responsibility. But then. She hesitated, taking a deep breath. A few Fridays back, I was out with Cody, my date, and we saw Mama. She was having dinner at the Rib Shack, with Uncle Ricky. A real fancy, romantic dinner. My blood ran cold. Summer, she just kept talking, the words tumbling out like a busted dam. It didn't make no sense, Daddy. Jenna always worked late on Fridays and Mama was supposed to be working, too. So, Cody and we started keeping an eye out. Turns out, Ricky, he'd leave his truck at the Piggly Wiggly, then Mama would meet him. They'd drive off together, closer than two ticks on a hound dog. I hated what I was hearing, but I trusted Summer with my life. She wouldn't lie to me. I motioned for her to keep going. I told Rhett. She went on, her voice shaking. He went and got some of his buddies, and they followed him a few times. Turns out Ricky was renting some fancy apartment over by the river. Said it was for business meetings. But we all knew what kind of business he was conducting. Turns out, it was Mama he was meeting there. I reached out and took Summer's hand. It was cold as ice. I believe you, darlin'. Go on. Rhett, he confronted Jenna with it. Summer said, tears welled in her eyes. Showed her the apartment, everything. Jenna, she was devastated. She turned to Rhett for support and, well, one thing led to another. Summer swallowed hard. They became involved. Rhett told me last night that Jenna's baby, it's his. Ricky, he can't have kids. Had the chickenpox something fierce as a kid. I poured myself a stiff drink. Lord, I needed it. How long has this been going on? Your Mama and Ricky? 18 months, at least. She said quietly. They were already together, the last time you were home. What about Rhett getting shot? What happened there? Mama, she stood Ricky up the other night. Didn't meet him at the apartment. Ricky, he went back home, and he found Rhett and Jenna together. Things got out of hand. Ricky, he always carried a gun, said it was for protection 'cause he carried so much cash. One thing led to another, and he shot Rhett. What a mess. I sighed, running a hand over my face. I need to hear Rhett's side of this, but not now. We gotta get that hospital paperwork sorted and find a good divorce lawyer. When's your Mama due back? Saturday morning, Summer said. All right, here's the plan. I'm gonna rent a car, get us out of here. Can't stay in this house right now. Tomorrow, we'll take care of the hospital bills, then find that lawyer. And Summer, I need you to call your Mama tonight. Put it on speakerphone so I can record it. For the lawyer, you understand. Summer's face crumpled. She knew there was no turning back. I've been dreading this day, Daddy. Praying it would all just go away, but... She wiped her tears. Daddy, I want to come live with you. Please. Buttercup, if that's what you want, we'll make it happen. I'm home for at least 2 months. Plenty of time to find a place, get myself a new job. For now, let's keep it under wraps, okay? Don't let on that I'm back. You mean it? She asked, hope flickering in her eyes. I do. Might mean Chong in schools, though. Are you up for that? She launched herself at me again, and I held on tight. Never felt so much love and desperation in a single hug. We called the school, told him Summer wouldn't be in, then snuck out the back as a taxi pulled up. Just as we were leaving, I got a text from Jenna. Hank, we need to talk. I gotta explain things. I texted back. I know. We'll be in touch. Gotta take care of my girl right now. It surprised me, seeing her at home. But then again, nothing surprises me anymore. We got out at Cape River in a beat-up Chevy, the kind of car Shauna would never be caught dead in. Headed for the Hill, a little town about an hour out, checked into a motel that looked like it hadn't been updated since Elvis was king. After taking care of the insurance paperwork at the hospital, Rhett called Summer's cell. Jenna was there with him. He knew I was back. I told Summer to play it cool, said we'd fill him in later. We were gonna break it to Shauna tonight, let the chips fall where they may. We spent the afternoon looking at businesses for sale. Figured I might as well make a clean break while I was at it, but nothing felt right. Told the realtor to keep his ears open, made plans to look at some houses on Friday. Back at the motel, I called my bosses. Told him about the situation, said there was a good chance I might not be coming back. Family came first. They understood, and said they'd miss having me on the crew. 20 years, gone just like that. I also set up a meeting with a lawyer for the first thing Monday morning. Checked the bank accounts on my phone, Saw we had a good chunk of change saved up. House was paid for, so the divorce should be straightforward. Split the assets down the middle, easy peasy. All right, Buttercup, I said to Summer, giving her a squeeze. I'm gonna go talk to Jenna now, and hear her side of things. Be back soon. Jenna let me in without a word. She looked like a ghost of her former self, eyes red-rimmed, shoulders slumped with the weight of the world. Hank, I'm so sorry. She choked out. You shouldn't have to deal with this mess. Not now. Drink? She asked, already heading for the liquor cabinet. Pour me something strong, darlin'. It's been a long day. She fixed us both a bourbon and branch water, her hands shaking slightly. When she sat down, I gestured for her to start from the beginning. It was a Wednesday, middle of the day. I was at the paper, trying to meet a deadline, when Rhett called. Asked if we could meet, said it was important. I figured he was planning some kinda anniversary surprise for me and Ricky. Bless his heart, he always tries to make things special. Her voice cracked. Instead, he drops this bomb on me. Says Shauna and Ricky, they're sleeping together. Didn't believe him at first. Thought he was mistaken or something. But he showed me. Drove me right over to that fancy apartment Ricky was renting. We saw him through the window, plain as day. Ricky and your wife. I was crushed, Hank. Like someone had ripped my heart right out of my chest. Jenna pulled out her phone. Show me pictures that made my stomach churn. The timeline matched up with what Summer had told me. Jenna, you mind sending me those? I asked, my voice flat. Gonna need him for the divorce. Her eyes went wide. Divorce? You're sure? Ain't no comin' back from this, Jenna. You know that. A thought struck me, and I added. Say, Glenn mentioned something about Shauna only dating black fellas back in high school. You think? Maybe those friendly little touches over the years, maybe they weren't so innocent after all? You never know. Jenna said softly. Then, after a long pause. Hank, about me and Rhett. He's a good boy, Jenna. Just like you said, he's a lot like me. Always there for the people he cares about. He was there for you when you needed someone most. He was. She whispered, her eyes downcast. Strong, steady. One night, after we'd had some wine, I kissed him. And he kissed me back. That kiss. It was filled with more love than I'd felt in years, Hank. We got closer, and about 6 months ago, we crossed that line. It wasn't revenge, Hank. It just happened. I took a sip of my bourbon, letting the words sink in. The truth was, I understood. My job, those long stretches away, they'd created a distance between me and Shauna. We were married, but somewhere along the way, we'd become strangers. Every time I came home, we had to start over, rebuild that connection, only for me to leave again a few weeks later. It was like we were living parallel lives, me and Shauna. Each time I came home, we were strangers again, forced to find our way back to each other, only to have it ripped apart when I had to ship back out. It was wearing us both down, I reckon. One of the reasons I was thinking about hanging up my hard hat for good. Jenna, she'd been quiet, watching me as I worked my way through my drink. When I finally met her gaze, she just nodded, a sad understanding in her eyes. Thanks for being honest, Jenna. I appreciate it. Rhett, well, he's a good man. He'll figure out what's right for him and Jenna. Been independent his whole life. I'll support whatever they decide. Thank you, Hank. Jenna said, tears welling up again. Rhett, he said you'd understand. Said you'd be fair. Did he now? Well, your timeline adds up, Jenna. And those pictures, let's just say I've seen enough. Jenna took a shaky breath. Ricky, he got served with divorce papers yesterday. Right before, he was under a court order to stay away from me, the house. Guess that's what set him off. Suddenly, the pieces clicked. Ricky always did have a temper, especially when things didn't go his way. He must have gone back to the house, intending to confront Jenna, find her with Rhett, and, well, it wouldn't be the first time that man had let his anger get the best of him. He always did carry that gun, I muttered, thinking out loud. Said it was for protection, carrying all that cash around. Jenna, listen, for the next few days, it's best folks don't know I'm back in town. That's why I rented that clunker. Summer, she's clear about wanting to live with me. I aim to make that happen. I left Jenna's that evening with a heavy heart, armed with the truth and a newfound determination. Summer was waiting for me at the motel. I told her everything, watching her face as the story unfolded. Makes sense, I guess. Summer sighed, shaking her head. Rhett, he's always been older than his years, ya know? Always dating older women. Those pictures, what he told me, it all adds up. Guilt twisted in my gut. Maybe I'm partly to blame. Me being gone all the time. Rhett, he probably felt like he had to step up, be the man of the house. I shook my head, remembering how young I was when Rhett was born. Wasn't much older than him myself. The truth was, I knew that no matter what I said or did, Rhett would make his own choices. It was his life to live. Daddy, should I call Mama? Let her know what's going on? Summer asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Hold on, Buttercup. First things first. Find us an app that can record calls. I need proof, you understand? Summer, ever resourceful, found one within minutes. We both downloaded it, then sat there, staring at her phone like it was a rattlesnake about to strike. After 3 agonizing rings, Shauna answered. Summer put her on speaker. Mama, it's Summer. Need a note for school tomorrow. Couldn't make it in today. Why not? You feelin' all right? Shauna sounded more annoyed than concerned. Nah, I was at the hospital with Rhett last night. Didn't get much sleep. Too tired to go to school today. What happened to Rhett? Is he gonna be all right? Did he hurt his shoulder badly? There was a flicker of genuine worry in her voice now. Shot in the shoulder. Close range. Summer said flatly. What? Shot? How in the world? Summer, don't you leave nothing out. Tell me what happened. Shauna was full on panicking now. It happened, Mama, because you weren't where you were supposed to be Wednesday afternoon. Summer's voice was cold as steel. What are you trying to say? I was at work. Where else would I be? Shauna's voice was tight, but I could hear the lie in it. No, Mama. You were at 644 Riverwalk Drive, apartment 4. With Uncle Ricky. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. How long have you known? Shauna finally choked out. Pretty much from the start. Saw you with him at the rib shack, remember? Rhett, he did some digging, found your love nest. Even took Jenna there to see for herself. Pictures are pretty convincing, Mama. We could hear Shauna sobbing on the other end. Oh, God, Summer. I messed up. I'm flying home Saturday morning. We need to talk. Before your father gets back. There's more, Mama. Summer said, her voice steely calm. I gave her a quick thumbs up, she was nailing it. A flicker of a smile crossed her face, knowing she was making everything crystal clear for Shauna. Ricky, he got those divorce papers served at your love nest on Wednesday. Went back home in a rage. Said he was gonna fix things with Jenna, keep his marriage, but keep seeing you on the side too. Guess he figured he could have his cake and eat it too. Didn't know Jenna and Rhett had gotten together. Ricky, he barged into that house, found Jenna and Rhett. Well, you can guess the rest. He flew off the handle, grabbed his gun, and shot Rhett. Oh, God? Shauna's voice was barely a whimper now. Where's Rhett? Is Ricky? Ricky's in jail. Attempted murder. Rhett's gonna be okay. He's tough, but he's gonna need a lot of rehab. Summer, honey, do I tell your father all this? Or should he just hear it on the news tomorrow? Just give me a few minutes to think, Mama. I'll call him myself. It's probably for the best if I handle it. There was a long pause. Oh, and Mama? You're gonna be a grandma. Jen is 3 months along. It's Red's. Shauna completely lost it. I couldn't blame her. Summer hung up the phone, her face pale but determined. I poured us both a stiff drink. Summer's, I left straight. She was old enough for a taste, in a situation like this. I clinked my glass against hers. To you, Buttercup, handle yourself better than most grown folks would've. We sat there, sipping our drinks, waiting for the other shoe to drop. When the call finally came, it was my phone. I let it go straight to voicemail. After pouring myself another drink, I hit play, the speakerphone blasting Shauna's voice into the room. Hank, it's me. Call me when you get a chance. It's bad. Ricky, he shot Rhett, but he's gonna be alright. We need to talk. Daddy, shouldn't we check the news online? Summer asked, her voice quiet. She pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The Cape River Gazette had the story plastered all over its homepage. Husband shoots wife's lover, screamed the headline. It didn't hold back, laid out the whole sordid tale, names and all. But the biggest bombshell? Ricky Parsons wasn't his real name. Turns out, he was Raymond John Smith, wanted in 3 states for petty theft and possession with intent to distribute. His fingerprints, they did him in. They always do. I grabbed my phone, dialed the Cape River PD. Told him about Ricky's tool truck, said they ought to get a warrant, tear it apart. And why would we do that, mister? The officer drew on the other end. Phillips. Hank Phillips. And 'cause in all the years I knew him, never saw the man actually sell a single wrench. Next, I looked up Glenn Charles on Facebook. Found him, called the number listed. His wife picked up, explained I'd bumped into Glenn at the airport, needed to get in touch with his sister, Amber. Said her ex-husband was, well, missing might be the word. Raymond John Smith, she said, after I gave her the whole story. Deadbeat dad, owes over 16 years of child support. Amber's been trying to track him down for years. Well, ma'am, he's in jail in Cape River, Missouri. Calling himself Ricky Parsons. And he was sleeping with my wife, Shauna. You're kidding me. She sounded more flabbergasted than disbelieving. Not kiddin'. Can I give Amber your number? Reckon this is something she needs to hear from family. Lord, yes. Amber's gonna be floored. Shauna, that conniving? Summer, she was pale as a sheet, just like me. It was like the world had gone plumb crazy. I shot a quick text to Jenna. You home? We need to talk. Daddy, Summer said quietly. You think Mama knew who Ricky really was? From the start? Don't know, Buttercup. Don't know what to think anymore. Feels like every time we turn around, there's another lie staring us in the face. Like they were, I don't know, relive their glory days or something. What else were they mixed up in? That's what I want to know. We sat there, trying to process it all. The more we learned, the more questions popped up, like weeds after a spring rain. There was a knock at the door. Summer answered it. Jenna stood there, looking more fragile than a hummingbird in a hurricane. I led her to the kitchen, fixed her a sweet tea vodka, the way she liked it. Showed her the updated news article. She just shook her head, speechless. Then Summer played the recording of her conversation with Shauna. Jenna's hand flew to her mouth. Jenna, darlin', I said gently. With Ricky using a fake name, there's a good chance your marriage ain't even legal. You need to get your lawyer on that, first thing. I've been at the hospital all day, Hank, she said, her voice weary. Was headin' home when I got your text. This is just. It gets worse, Jenna. Ricky, Raymond, he's got 2 grown kids. Boy and a girl. And his ex-wife? She was Shauna's best friend back in high school. Jenna's eyes welled up again. They knew, all along. They planned this. She trailed off, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. But, if he already had kids, why didn't I? Had a vasectomy, most likely. Before he met you. Only explanation that makes sense. I watched as Jenna and Summer talked in hushed voices, the weight of betrayal heavy in the air. My gut, it was screaming at me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Jenna, darlin', I said, leaning forward. Why'd Shauna cover for him all this time? She must have known what he was up to. You ever see bills, receipts, anything that pointed to where all that cash was coming from? Ricky always said, he said the corporation handled everything. Whatever that means. Jenna shook her head, looking lost. You ever see statements, money transfers, anything like that? No, but I know his Outlook password. We could check his emails? We piled into that beat-up Chevy and drove to Jenna's. Logging into Ricky's account felt like stepping into the belly of the beast. Turns out, the man had 4 other email accounts linked to his main one. Names I didn't recognize, messages filled with coded language. He was hiding something, that much was clear as moonshine. Jenna, honey, call the police first thing in the morning. Give him access to his emails. All of him. A chill ran down my spine. I'm gonna check our place. Gotta make sure nothing illegal stashed there. Money, pills, Lord knows what that man was into. I'll do the same. What if I find something? Jenna looked terrified. Call me. We'll figure it out. We gotta watch each other's backs now. Back at my own house, Summer watched me with wide, worried eyes. You really think Mama would let Ricky hide stuff here? In our house? After what I've learned today, darlin', I wouldn't rule anything out. Start looking in places folks don't usually think about, okay? The attic was the first place that came to mind. I grabbed a flashlight, headed for the garage. Pulled down the attic door, climbed the rickety wooden ladder. 5 massive garbage bags, stuffed into the darkest corner of the attic, like some kinda gruesome Christmas presents. Summer, get up here, now. Summer's eyes went wide as saucers when she saw those bags. I yanked the first one down. It hit the floor with a thud. Careful, Daddy, there's 4 more. I untied the second bag, and a pile of cash tumbled out. 20s, bundles of him. My blood ran ice cold. If there was this much cash at my place. Summer, go tell Jenna what we found. I'll deal with this. 5 minutes later, Summer and Jenna stood there, pale and speechless, as I finished going through the last of the bags. 5 bags, all filled with cash. And then, tucked behind those bags, a thin, leather-bound book. Ricky's ledger. Hank. Jenna's voice was barely a whisper. Can you check my place too? Please? Right after I make a phone call. I said grimly. The police came first. Then I drove over to Jenna's, a knot of dread twisting in my gut. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Hidden away in a dusty suitcase in the back of Jenna's closet. Cocaine. Enough to put half of Cape River 6 feet under. I put Ricky's ledger right next to it, then called the police again. Told them I needed a detective, ASAP. It took the police the better part of 3 hours to haul everything away. The cash, the drugs, the ledger. Evidence of a life built on lies. We're talking Mrs. Phillips into custody when she gets back in town, the detective said, handing me a card. Seems like she's got some explaining to do. Can't tie the money to anything, yet, the detective said, stuffing his notepad into his pocket. Gonna be logged as found money, turned in voluntarily by Mr. Phillips here. We'll be in touch if we have any more questions. Thank you, officer. I shook his hand. What about at my place? Jenna asked, her voice small. Those weren't mine. Seeing as how Mr. Parsons, or Smith, or whatever he wants to call himself, was living there, and you came forward, helping us with our investigation. You're in the clear, ma'am. The detective fixed his gaze on Jenna. He's gonna be singing a different tune, though. We'll be back tomorrow with a search warrant for your place, ma'am. Just a formality. Will you be searching his computer too? Jenna asked. Got a name and password for that email account, ma'am? The detective pulled out a fresh notepad. Jenna rattled off Ricky's login info. And officer, if you find any other pills, small amounts, just flush 'em, okay? I can't deal with that right now. Don't you worry, ma'am. Bet most of what he had is in that tool truck of his. We're tollin' that too. Gonna give it a good going over. After the cops left, the silence in Jenna's living room was heavier than a coffin. I poured myself another stiff drink. Jenna, after securing her house within an inch of its life, joined me in summer. Daddy, are you gonna tell Mama about all this? The money, the drugs? Summer asked, her voice small and scared. Better to let the law handle it, Buttercup. I'll finish searching both houses tomorrow while you're at school. Just in case. Thank you, Hank, for everything, Jenna said softly. Don't mention it, darlin'. Listen, I need you to follow me back to that motel tomorrow morning, return that rental. Can't have you driving around in that thing. Wouldn't want folks getting the wrong idea. And Summer, you're staying with me. Not leaving you alone in that house. Can I stay here, with Summer? Jenna asked, wringing her hands. Course you can. Rhett's old room's made up. Stay as long as you need. Around midnight, police sirens ripped through the quiet night. Woke us all up. Turns out, some fellas had tried to break into Jenna's place. Cops caught me red-handed. Said it was probably kids, looking for a quick score. But an unmarked cruiser stayed parked across the street all night, watching our houses. Didn't sleep a wink. At 5 a.m., I stepped outside, lit a cigarette. Needed something strong to settle my nerves. That's when my phone buzzed. Shauna. Hey, it's me. I answered, my voice rough. Hank. Oh, Hank, it's a mess here. Ricky, he shot Rhett. But he's gonna be okay, thank God. They're holding Ricky at the jailhouse investigation. Have you spoken to Jenna? Shauna sounded genuinely panicked for once. Summer and we were at the hospital. Haven't talked to Jenna yet. I'll get in touch with her today, let you know. When are you coming home? We miss you. Her voice cracked. Keeping an eye on that hurricane. Might have to evacuate the rig. If that happens, I'll be heading home. You serious? Evacuate? She sounded genuinely surprised. Yeah, it's a big one, this hurricane. They ain't taking any chances. Well, call me if that happens, okay? I'll get things ready here. I'll do that, Shauna. You take care. I hung up the phone, taking a long drag of my cigarette. That conversation, it told me everything I needed to know. She was still living in that fantasy world of hers, couldn't bring herself to admit the truth. And you know what? I realized didn't care anymore. Whatever feelings I had for her, they were gone, washed away like driftwood in a storm. I was free. After dropping Summer off at school, Jenna followed me back to the motel, returned the rental. Then we swung by my place, packed up my stuff. Decided Jenna should stay at Rhett's apartment for the time being. Safer that way. Spent the afternoon looking at houses with a realtor. Found one I liked, brand new subdivision, 3 bedrooms, big ol' backyard. Made a cash offer, put down a hefty deposit, and told the fella I wanted to close fast. Bought new locks on my way out. Texted Jenna and Summer the address. Started searching the place as soon as I got the keys. Figured I better check every nook and cranny. Didn't find any more drugs, but tucked away in a floorboard, I found a stack of bearer bonds. 10 grand apiece. News reported that the police had found items of interest at my place and Jenna's connected to the shoot-in. Figured that would throw him off the scent, at least for a while. Changed all the locks, the security code, even swapped out the mailbox just for good measure. Then I found it, Shauna's jewelry box. Except, it wasn't her jewelry inside. Diamonds, rubies, emeralds, sparkling like a pirate's treasure chest. Stuff Shauna could never afford, even with my salary. My gut churned. There was more, I just knew it. Headed back up to the attic, this time with a heavy-duty flashlight. Pushed aside some boxes, dug deeper into the darkest corner, and that's when I saw him. More bags. 20 of them this time. All stuffed with cash. I punched in the detective's number, my hand shaking. Phillips here. Found something else. Attic's looking like a bank vault. Before the cops arrived, I did something I probably shouldn't have. Pulled a few bundles of 50s from each bag. Not enough to be noticeable, just enough to give me some leverage. The rest, I left right where it was. Figured Ricky was gonna need something to bargain with once those prison doors slammed shut. Starting to think Ricky had been dealing those pills a lot longer than anyone knew. The detective whistled when he saw the haul. 20 bags, overflowing with cash. Damn, Phillips, you sure know how to pick him. He shook his head, grinning in disbelief. That's when it hit me. Should have left Ricky's ledger up there. Without it, I couldn't tie the cash to anything specific. Officer, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. You think Ricky, Raymond, you think he could have been doing this the whole time? The 20 years we've been living here? Could have been longer, considering he's been using that fake name. And you'd be surprised, Mr. Phillips, how many folks live with criminals for years and never suspect a thing. I'm interested to hear what Mrs. Phillips has to say about all this. How long have they been together? He paused. Oh, and one more thing. Glenn's wife, the one you spoke to? Turns out her ex, Raymond Smith, was married before Jenna. Woman named Amber. She's flying on Saturday. I want to confront him, maybe jog some memories loose. The detective flashed me a knowing smile just as Jenna pulled up. This just keeps getting better and better, he said, climbing back into his cruiser. She knows about all this? About Raymond? Jenna asked, her voice shaking. She does now, and I'm about to search her house too. After that stunt last night, I ain't taking any chances. Good luck with that, Phillips. The detective chuckled. I'm heading back to the station. Gonna have another chat with your buddy Ricky. We found a false floor in that tool truck of his. Full of cocaine. Yeah, he's done for. Jenna shuddered. Officer, she called after him. My lawyer, he'll be in touch. He's filing for an annulment. Immediately. We tore through Jenna's house like a couple of bloodhounds, searching every crack and crevice. Anything that even remotely looked suspicious, we flushed down the toilet. Couldn't be too careful. Jenna packed her essentials, and we moved her into Rhett's apartment. It was small, but it was safe. For now, that was all that mattered. We found a few more of those bearer bonds tucked away in a drawer. Jenna took them with her, figured they'd come in handy. Found a place I like, Jenna. Brand new house. Gonna use those bonds to make the down payment. Hope the offer goes through. You think Shauna was in on it with Ricky? Or was she just being played? Jenna asked, her voice hesitant. Hard to say, darlin'. We had keys to each other's places, always looking out for each other. Ricky would have stashed that stuff whenever he wanted. What gets me is why he never, I don't know, legitimized it. Put it in a bank, invested it. He was sitting on a fortune. Later that day, Summer and I went to see Rhett at the hospital. He was pale and still in pain, but the doctor said he'd make a full recovery. He's gonna be all right, Daddy, Summer said, squeezing my hand. We walked into Rhett's room, and Jenna was sitting by his bedside, holding his hand. When he saw us, a weary smile spread across his face. Hey, Dad, he rasped, his voice weak. Jenna, she told me about everything. The money, the drugs, and about you and Summer. Thanks, Dad, looking after her. You and Jenna, you two figuring things out? I asked, pulling up a chair. Yeah, we're gonna give it a go. See if this age difference thing, see if it works. We're both grown folks, we can handle it. Sounds mature. Proud of you, son. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate what you've done for Jenna. Looking after her, protecting her. Now that I see your side of it, how's she? I don't know how you're doing it, Dad. Son, I said, looking him square in the eye. I ain't gonna lie, what your mama did. It hurts, but I can't hate her for it. I wasn't there for her, not the way I should have been. My job, it took me away, left her lonely. If I ever get myself another relationship, well, my life's gotta change. Family comes first. Summer was quiet, listening intently. You don't hate her? She asked, her voice filled with disbelief. Hate's a powerful word, Summer. I'm disappointed, hurt, but not hateful. I put my job first for too long. Left the raisin of you two up to her. When you got older, well, she didn't have anyone. No one gave her the attention she craved. I'm sad for her, Summer. Sad that it came to this. And who knows, maybe she's got bigger problems on the horizon. What do you mean? Rhett asked, frowning. If the cops tie her to what Ricky was doing, that money, those drugs, she could be looking at some serious time, son. It's amazing how folks can ignore the truth, even when it's staring them right in the face. Rhett and Summer sat there, silent, trying to process it all. Saturday morning, I got the call. My offer on the house had been accepted. Headed straight to the realtor's office, paid the down payment with those bearer bonds. Walking out of there feeling lighter than I had in years. Got a text on my way back to the apartment. "Hank, it's Amber, Glenn's sister. Can we meet? Where are you at?" I texted back. "Airport, just landed. Be there at 15. That's a steal, you know. The price you got on that house," the realtor said, handing me the paperwork. Surprised they accepted it so fast. That's why I asked if any others had sold lately. Nothing gets folks interested like a sold sign. Headed straight for the airport. Amber, she was standing near the baggage claim, looking around anxiously. The last flight from St. Louis had just left, so the place was deserted. She was a handsome woman, soft brown hair, and kind eyes. Dressed in jeans and a simple blouse, but she had that quiet confidence about her, the kind you couldn't fake. "You look just like the picture Glenn sent," she said, a tentative smile on her face. "Nice to finally meet you, Mr. Phillips. Call me Hank," I said, shaking her hand. We grabbed a bite to eat at the airport diner, getting to know each other. She noticed I wasn't wearing my wedding band. Figured there wasn't much point, after finding out about Shauna. I shrugged, trying to sound nonchalant. Turns out, after her divorce, Amber had gone back to using her maiden name. Made sense. We were sitting by the window, watching folks comin' and goin', when the mornin' flight from St. Louis arrived. That's when I saw her, Shauna, walking through the gate, looking around like a lost puppy. I gave her a little wave, just to see her reaction. Amber turned to see who I was waving at. Shauna froze mid-step, her face turning whiter than a bleached sheet. She hadn't caught the local news, had no clue what was waiting for her back in Cape River. A detective, plainclothes, walked up to her, flashed his badge. Shauna just nodded numbly, and they went to retrieve her bags. "She didn't know you were back in town, did she?" Amber asked, her voice quiet. "Nope, keep it under wraps. Figured it was best that way. Whatever she was planning, it's over now. She's about to find out about the cash, the drugs, the whole damn circus." "Hank, you mind if I handle your divorce? I'd kinda like to take that woman down a peg or two. Plus, with her and my ex." She trailed off, shaking her head. "This whole thing stinks to high heaven. Can you even manage it, with me traveling back and forth?" "Got my own firm, Hank. Run it out of my house. Plus, I'll be here anyway, dealing with my deadbeat ex." She flashed me a smile that could melt glaciers. "Well then, looks like we got a deal. You got a printer? We can get started today." We tossed Shauna's bags into my truck, then I drove Amber over to the county jail. She wanted to see Ricky. Said she had a few things to get off her chest. I waited in the parking lot, smoking and wondering what fresh hell would break loose next. About an hour later, Amber came out, a satisfied smirk on her face. "He was shocked, seeing me," she said, climbing back into the truck. "Asked how I found him. Told him it was all thanks to you. And I mentioned that the police had seized his little treasure trove. The cash, the pills, the ledger. He went white as a ghost. Guess he thought he was gonna waltz out of this scot-free." I called the detective, gave him an update. "Handwriting analysis should be back Monday. Might be able to tie Shauna to those pills, but not the cash. That ledger, turns out it's mostly names and numbers. Suppliers, clients, the whole network. Looks like your soon-to-be ex was in it up to her eyeballs, Hank. Well, that'll make the divorce a whole lot easier. Yeah, she's gonna need her share to pay those lawyer fees. We're charging her as an accessory. No bail hearing, till Monday." We drove back to my place, Amber ready to get started on that divorce petition. On the way, I explained how we'd handled our finances. "Smart move," Amber said, nodding in approval. "Separate accounts? We can argue that the money you earned ain't marital property. Makes things a whole lot cleaner." While I brewed a pot of coffee, Amber set up her laptop, ready to draft the petition. I pulled out my phone, sent her the pictures Jenna had given me. The evidence was Mountain and Shauna Richards. Well, she was about to get what was coming to her. I showed Amber the pictures Jenna had sent. Told her I wanted nothing to do with that house. Too many bad memories. Think Shauna can afford to buy you out? Based on how y'all split things? Amber asked, tapping away at her laptop. She should be able to, I said. Within a couple of hours, the divorce petition was ready. I gave Amber the access code to my printer, and we cranked out copies. Filed them with the county clerk first thing Monday morning. Summer came home from hanging out with her friends just as we were finishing up. She and Amber hit it off right away. Must be something about lawyers. They got a way of putting folks at ease. Summer, this here's Amber Charles. Her family's from Dutchtown. Amber, this is my daughter, Summer. She'll be moving in with me next week, once we get the furniture sorted. Summer's eyes widened. She gave me a hug that nearly cracked my ribs. Daddy, you bought a house? Already? Brand new. 3 bedrooms, open floor plan, 2-car garage. Even got a basement, unfinished though. And a raised patio. Whatcha think? It's perfect, but it's not landscaped. She sounded crestfallen for a split second, then her face brightened. Think we could get a pool? After we close, I mean? Summer had been begging for a pool for years. Didn't want to ruin the landscaping at the old place, but this new house, it was a blank slate. We'll look into it, Buttercup. I promise. It was getting late. Where y'all want to go for dinner? I asked. Ruby Tuesdays? Summer and Amber said in unison. They both craved that salad bar. After dinner, we dropped by Enterprise so Amber could rent a car. Summer invited Amber to come furniture shopping with us Sunday, and she happily agreed. We were becoming quite the little family. Monday morning, I sat in the courtroom, watching as charges were read against Ricky Parsons, or Raymond John Smith, as the court clerk called him. He was denied bail. Shauna, they set her bail at $500,000. Amber served her with the divorce papers, then marched right over to Ricky and served him with papers for back child support. As we walked out of that courtroom, holding hands, I saw Ricky and Shauna watching us. They knew their reign of terror was over. Later that day, I finalized the purchase of my new house, using the rest of those bearer bonds. By 4 o'clock, Amber had filed the divorce papers, paid all the court fees. Felt good, having that monkey off my back. But that evening, when Amber got back to her parents' house, she found something tucked under the windshield wiper of her rental car. A letter. A ransom note. They had Summer. Demanded the rest of the money, the stuff I hadn't turned over to the cops. Tell him I'll meet him. Midnight. Trail of Tears State Park. Send him the exact location. My voice was cold as ice. No one messed with my daughter. No one. Back at the house, I packed my truck. Propane tanks. A weld and torch. My old tent. And my crossbow. Set up camp at the park, then under the cover of darkness, rigged a trap at the cliffside viewing area. Loosened the bolts on the railin' just enough. Tied a duffel bag full of crumpled newspaper to the railin', making it look heavy, valuable. Didn't have to wait long. A beat-up pickup pulled up. A fella I vaguely recognized, Earl, one of Ricky's running buddies. Stepped out of the shadows, crossbow raised. You make sure my daughter gets home safe, Earl, and that bag's all yours. You try anything funny? I didn't need to finish the sentence. Earl gulped, his eyes darting between me and the crossbow. And if I don't agree? He squeaked. I'll put a bolt through your gut, then I'll hunt down your brothers. One by one. He scrambled for his phone, his hands trembling. Watched him sweat, watched his face pale as he realized that the crossbow held 3 arrows, not 1. Ricky, he thought you'd gone soft, Hank. Earl said, his voice shaking. He's planning on breaking out of jail. Needs those bearer bonds, get him and your wife out of the country. Said you were on the ledger too. How do you know about the ledger? I asked, narrowing my eyes. I gave it to the cops, Earl. They know all about you. It's only a matter of time. Now, if Summer's unharmed, you might want to use what's in that bag to disappear. Fast. Earl made another frantic call, his voice a panicked whisper. Told his brothers to drop Summer off, then get the hell out of Dodge. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Amber. Summer's home, Hank. Safe and sound. They just dropped her off. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Switched off my flashlight, melted back into the darkness. Earl, he stumbled towards the railing, reaching for the bag. The bolts, they gave way. He went over the edge with a scream that was swallowed by the night. I packed up my tent, got back in my truck, drove home, and fell into a dreamless sleep. Earl made a panicked call, his voice barely a whisper, telling his brothers to drop Summer off and hightail it out of there. He knew he'd pushed his luck too far this time. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Amber. Summer's home, Hank. Safe and sound. They just dropped her off. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. I shut off my flashlight, melted back into the darkness. Earl, greedy fool, reached for the duffel bag, leaning over the railing. The bolts gave way, and he tumbled over the edge, his scream swallowed by the night. I went back to my tent, and slept like the dead. It took 2 weeks for them to find Earl's body, tangled up in the trees at the bottom of the ravine. Heard through the grapevine that Ricky didn't take the news too well. Early Tuesday morning, I drove over to Amber's parents' house in Dutchtown. Summer came running out to greet me, a bright smile on her face. Amber's folks, they welcomed me in like one of their own, and invited me to stay for breakfast. Turns out, the county sheriff was retiring. And Amber's daddy, Glenn, well, he was a big wheel in the local Democratic Party. Had a lot of pull, folks said. You know, Hank, Glenn said, passing me a plate of biscuits and gravy. With Sheriff Jackson stepping down, well, we need a good man to take his place. Someone honest, someone with a backbone. Ever thought about running for office? Running for sheriff? Me? I chuckled, taking a sip of coffee. You willing to take the state qualification courses? Get certified? Glenn asked, his eyes twinkling. Reckon I could do that. Then I believe you've officially started your campaign, son. Glenn grinned, clapping me on the shoulder. Summer beamed at me, pride shining in her eyes. One thing I know about my daddy, when he sets his mind to something, he gets it done. I handed Summer my phone, played that recording of her conversation with Shauna. Watched their faces as the truth unfolded. Mama, she was never gonna be honest with us, was she? Summer said softly, handing the phone back to me. No, darlin', she wasn't. A thought struck me. Starting to wonder if she was the one who got Ricky back into the pill business. Using my money. The room went quiet. Glenn, his wife, Amber, and Summer, they all stared at me, processing the implications. Folks, I said, leaning back in my chair. We're all on the same page here. What happened at the park, with Earl, that stays between us. Things didn't go exactly the way Ricky and Shauna planned. And that's all anyone needs to know. I called the detective, told him Ricky might be making a run for it in the next few days. You got a knack for this stuff, Phillips. He chuckled. Should have been a cop. We were heading back to Cape River when my phone rang. Shauna. Hank, I made bail. Be out in a couple of hours. Can I get into the house? Her voice was small, uncertain. Amber and Summer looked at me, waiting for my response. House is all yours, Shauna. Be there this afternoon. My lawyer will bring your car over to that love nest of yours, along with the keys. Summer and we'll have taken what we need. The rest, well, you can deal with it. I hung up before she could argue. Amber, I said, turning to her. Most of the furniture's getting delivered today. They'll set it all up. Think you could, supervise? I'd love to, Hank. She said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. We dropped Amber off at the new house first. She and Summer went inside, their voices echoing with excitement. The appliance delivery folks were due at 10, the furniture trucks right after that. Daddy, Summer said, coming back out to the truck. It's amazing. So much space. I picked out my room. It's got its own bathroom and a walk-in closet. Should we grab pots and pans and stuff from the old house? Basic stuff? She asked, biting her lip. Nah, Buttercup. Let's start fresh. We'll pack our clothes, personal stuff, and bring it over here. Then you and Amber can go shopping for whatever else we need. The windows, they have built-in blinds, Amber said, joining us. Give you some privacy, till you get curtains. As Summer and I were pulling out of the driveway, I heard someone calling my name. Dad. It was Rhett. Jenna was with him. They'd just come out of the house across the street. I parked the truck, introduced everyone. It was kinda funny, watching Jenna and Amber size each other up. Different skin tones, sure, but they had similar builds, which explained my attraction to Amber, I guess. Headed back to the old house, ready to pack up our lives and leave that nightmare behind. Stopped at the bank first. Opened a new checking account, transferred money from savings, got new debit cards for Summer and me. Paid off my credit card, had my paychecks rerouted. Those wardrobe boxes I'd picked up made packing a breeze. Couple of hours and we were done. Tucked those bearer bonds I'd kept safe at the bottom of one box, just in case. Headed back up to the attic one last time, grabbed those 50 bundles of 50s. Summer, don't forget to change all your passwords. I reminded her. You're taking your laptop with you. Unloaded the wardrobe boxes at the new place. Then the ladies headed out to stock up on groceries and supplies. I hauled the old furniture out to the front yard, piled it up for a bonfire later. Called AT&T, set up internet service. The ladies came back with a truckload of stuff just as the delivery guys were finishing up. Master bedroom and Summer's room were all set up, living room and family room organized, kitchen table and chairs in place. We had the basics, at least. Just needed that internet hooked up so we could watch TV. For now, Summer's laptop and the free Wi-Fi at the diner would have to do. Amber and I drove Shauna's car over to the apartment. Figured she'd needed to get to work. I waited in the truck while Amber went inside. An hour later, she came back out, shaking her head. Get any answers? I asked. Not really. She claims their relationship started after my marriage to Ricky ended. Said she was gonna divorce you after Summer finished school. They've been together for 6 years, Hank. 6 years. And Raymond, he's been dealing those pills the whole damn time. Shauna claims she didn't know nothing about the stuff in your attic, but I ain't buying it. I recorded our conversation, by the way. Summer synced her phone to mine earlier. Smart girl. Think we should send that recording to the detective? I asked. Hell, yeah. Amber laughed. And Hank, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm getting the feeling you're interested in seeing where this goes. Thought we were already working on that, darlin'. Even your folks noticed the sparks flyin'. I grinned. Summer suggested KFC or fish and chips for dinner. Whatcha think? Amber said, moving a little closer. KFC it is. The mashed potatoes and gravy are callin' my name. We grabbed a bucket of chicken and headed back to the new house. Summer had been busy. Sheets were washed, groceries put away, dishwashers humming along. And bless her heart, she'd even picked up a bottle of bourbon and some soda. We ate dinner at the kitchen table, talking and laughing like a real family. Afterward, I went to unpack in the master bedroom. Amber and Summer came in to help make the bed and set up the room. Towels, bath mat, a little trash can. They even found a matching set of alarm clocks with nightlights for the nightstands. Summer had picked out my favorite shower gel and shampoo. I gathered up the empty boxes, took them out to the burn pile, adding a few more from the kitchen. Checked out the new appliances, coffee maker, toaster, microwave, all shinin' and ready to go. It was coming together, this new life of mine. The ladies finished up with Summer's room, and I headed outside, struck a match, and lit that pile of debris on fire. Watched the flames licking at the night sky, thinking about all that had happened. Almost missed the call, my soon-to-be ex. It's all gone, Hank. Shauna's voice was frantic, bordering on hysterical. The money, everything, where is it? Call the detective, Shauna. Maybe he can help you." I chuckled, hanging up on her. My phone rang again. Rhett. "Hey, Dad. Jenna and we just bought that house across the street from you. Mama called, but I told her off. She wasn't too happy about it. Expect her to come crying to you." "Good for you, son. Glad you're standing your ground." We talked for a bit, him asking about Jenna and Amber, how they were getting along. Told him they were both adults, they'd figure it out. They needed to focus on the fact that Ricky had used them both. I took a last drag of my cigarette, tossed it into the embers of the fire. Headed back inside. The washer was running, the house was filled with the smells of dinner and clean laundry. Summer came over to me, her face soft in the dim light of the living room. "Good night, Daddy. Love you." "Love you too, Buttercup. Sleep tight." "I'll lock up after I drive Amber home," I said, noticing the puzzled look on Summer's face. Amber came down the stairs wearing a brand new nightgown and robe. Now I understood that look Summer was giving me. "I'll be right back, Buttercup," I said, giving her a wink. "Think I'll grab a quick shower while Amber's clothes are in the wash." A knock at the door woke me up later. Summer needed a ride to school. I dressed quickly, met her at the door. She was beaming at me. "Daddy, you look happier than I've seen you in years." "I am, Buttercup. Happy for you, happy for me, happy for us." After dropping her off, I promised to pick her up later. It felt good to be home, to finally relax. No pressing tasks, no deadlines, nothing but time to spend with Amber, which I did plenty of. AT&T hooked up the internet around lunchtime. Amber's folks arrived soon after, bringing her car and some clothes. A photographer came by to take a professional headshot for my campaign. Glenn, he figured he'd have enough signatures to get me on the ballot by the end of the week. I slipped him $5,000 in cash to get things moving. Amber took her mama on a tour of the house. Turns out, she'd already been putting her personal touch on the place when we were picking out furniture. "Glenn," I asked, pulling him aside. Did I ever stand a chance with your daughter?" "Honestly, Hank, when Amber came home Saturday night, after seeing you at the airport, well, I was shocked. Said, 'Daddy, I met the man I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with.'" He chuckled. Then, after what happened Monday night, she told me, "Daddy, Hank, he took control. He took the power back from those men who were holding Summer hostage." "Summer, she didn't tell you what happened, did she?" "Said she didn't know what happened exactly. Said those fellas got scared and let her go. But she could tell by their voices, on the phone, that they were related. Said it was Earl and his brothers. Those boys, they've always been trouble. When I showed up with that crossbow, told Earl he had one chance to let Summer go, or he was a dead man. He hesitated, so I told him to call his brothers, tell him I was coming for him. Can't say for sure if he was still breathing when I walked away." "And, what about now?" Glenn asked, his eyes narrowing. "Time will tell, Glenn. Time will tell." Glenn smiled, a genuine, approving smile. "You're old school, Hank. Welcome to the family. I'd be proud to have a grandson from you." His words, they confirmed what I already knew. We shared the same values. Tough, principled, like those Missouri red mules, stubborn and strong. 6 months later, we were all gathered at the VFW hall, waiting for the election results. My folks, Amber's folks, Jenna and Rhett, they were all there, taking turns holding my newborn grandson. Shauna and Ricky, they were doing life without parole. My divorce was final. My old company had given me early retirement. And I just deposited over $6 million, returned to me by the police. The money they couldn't tie to anything. Summer finally got her pool. Amber's law practice was booming, with 4 assistants working out of our finished basement. Life was good. Before joining the crowd, I knelt down in front of Amber. Pulled out a little velvet box. "Amber Lynn Charles, will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes, and she nodded, a radiant smile illuminating her face. Slipped the ring on her finger just as the news declared me the winner of the sheriff's race. Glenn, he was beaming with pride. Not just for our engagement, but for the new sheriff in town. Thanks for sticking with me through this gripping story of Hank Phillips. From the oil rigs to the heart of a family torn apart by betrayal, we've seen how one man's resilience and determination can turn even the darkest situations around. In the end, Hank not only uncovered the truth but also reclaimed his life, finding new love and purpose along the way. As he steps into his new role as sheriff, it's a reminder that no matter how deep the challenges run, with faith and perseverance, we can all find our way to a brighter future. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales that inspire and uplift.